Well, without, oh, I guess there's a tiny bit at the end there, isn't there?
Yeah.
But I'm going to go ahead because I have to actually read Anthony's introduction because he has so many accomplishments under his belt. I could not memorize them all. So your wine educator tonight is Anthony Giglio. He's a nationally renowned wine expert who teaches about wine at every level. He's an in-demand speaker, a frequent instructor at the Food and Wine Classic in Aspen, which isn't happening this year, but I know some of you might know about the virtual Food and Wine Aspen that's happening this Thursday, and he's going to host a tasting on line there. He's at the Pebble Beach Food and Wine, the New York Food and Wine, all of the big festivals. He is also the wine director for the American Express Centurion Global Lounge Network, which is at airports. And he's a longtime contributor to Food and Wine magazine. He's also an author of 11 books. I'm not going to read them all, but they really span the full breadth of food and wine and spirits. He's visited Conegliano, Valdobbiadene, Prosecco Superiore region multiple times, and he's very excited to share his knowledge with you now. So Anthony, take it away.
How's everybody doing? Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to my dining room in beautiful Jersey City, New Jersey. Anybody got a problem with Jersey City? Let's get it over with right now. Anybody? Just get it over with, okay? You're all muted, but I could tell, I'll be looking at your expressions. I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm thrilled to be talking about Prosecco because, believe it or not, in the days of COVID lockdown, I really thought my career was over when 12 events were canceled just for the 3 months between March and June, and even writing gigs I was doing for the European Union, several countries there, everything canceled. And my wife, Tony, who's the marketing director at Food and Wine Magazine, said, you better figure out Zoom. I think that's what's gonna go on next. You gotta get on Zoom. And I thought she was crazy because, you know, for me, I felt like we shouldn't be celebrating like drinking and partying and I don't know, I felt like fiddling while Rome was burning back in the early days of the lockdown in March. But I have been hired to host over 60 events through August so far. I mean, there's still, it's just crazy what's going on. And one of the popular topics that I'm asked to do over and over again because people really, really resonate, especially among consumers, is champagne versus Prosecco. And I think this is, and I prod people to go down that lane with me because I always start with the joke, okay, so the next party you're at, you know, this is of course a pre-COVID one-liner, but next party you're at and the waiter brings over the tray of sparkling wine and says, champagne, I would like you to stop and politely say, really? Is it really champagne? Can I see the bottle, please? Because the odds are very, very good that it's never champagne. You know, unless you're at Beck Hopkins' house or maybe Kimberly Charles's house, maybe Josh Phelps' house, maybe Steve DeVaris. But just naming friends I could see on my screen. Sorry, guys. All of you have champagne taste, but the point is, it's usually Prosecco. I mean, it's 99% of the time it's Prosecco, and it drives me insane that they call it champagne. So I said, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna talk about champagne and Prosecco in the context of bubbles, but that is the only thing they share in common. They are apples and oranges when it comes to describing how they're made and how they're meant to be enjoyed and the immediacy of Prosecco versus the aging of champagne and champagne method. It's an eye opener. And in the beginning, we even started doing it just as a BYOB because we didn't want to make people spend money yet. We weren't sure if people could even get out of their houses. And I said, I would bet that everybody has a bottle of sparkling wine in their house, whether it's the champagne, the special champagne they're holding for the occasion that never comes, and then the bottle dies somewhere under the bed or in the fridge where the dehumidifying refrigerator kills it, or they have Prosecco everywhere because people always have Prosecco in the house, or maybe even Cava, but come BYOB with a bottle of sparkling and I will tell you about it. And I could talk for hours about this stuff. So then comes along Kimberly and Liz and say, hey, would you like to host a masterclass on Prosecco? And I'm like, yes. I haven't been there it's been about 10 years. First time I went over there, I think it was in 2008. So we have a slideshow to show you. A lot has happened, but I mean, it's kind of crazy because when I was there in 2008, it was actually a collaboration between Consorzio Prosecco along with Tuscany. So I had to go to, they invited me to come to Brunello di Montalcino, Vino Nobile di Montepulciano, Chianti Classico, and then Prosecco. And Prosecco was really excited because they were just getting ready to propose the idea of requiring a UNESCO heritage classification, and it took over 10 years to get it from there to here. So it happened last year, and it's really, really big news. And you'll see the magnificent slides that Kimberly has here, and the pictures we're going to show you, that it's just really one of the most beautiful places on the planet. And the Giro d'Italia, the big bike ride through this area is coming up in May. So that'll be, I think, on May 20th. I'm not sure. Kimberly maybe could correct me, but let's share your Prosecco Superiore experience on social media, everybody. And also, I would love if we had enough time and bandwidth to go through everybody, but I want you to memorize these impossible words. But think about it. Here's my argument about Conegliano. There's an invisible G in Champagne. There's an invisible G in Giglio, and there's an invisible G in Conegliano. So it's not Conegliano, it's not Giglio, and it's not Champagne. It is Conegliano. Valdobbiadene, not Liz and I were talking about all the different ways people say it. Valdobbiadene, Superiore, DOCG. The Superiore is really important, really, really important. And I've been teaching this for years when I talk about Chianti and Chianti Classico. It's like, if we're looking for, what makes one part stand out over the other, Chianti Classico is like the extra word Classico really takes us right into the heart of the best part of the zone. Same thing with Conegliano, Valdobbiadene, Superiore. So we're in the heart of an enormous Prosecco zone. We are right in the tiny, tiny center. So who are we? Not all Prosecco is created equal. We can move on. So there you could see the entire zone, and then the tiny, tiny little gold heart in the middle there is the area of Conegliano, Valdobbiadene, Prosecco Superiore, DOCG. So the area is quite large all around it. So there's like, it's like sort of like buffer zones that expand out throughout, but we are only interested in the very, very heart and the historic center. This is where it all began. And the area includes 15 communes, two of which give their name to the denomination from east to west. So Conegliano in the east and Valdobbiadene in the west of the territory. This pyramid, everyone seems to love this pyramid because it helps make so much more sense of everything. So the giant, bottom of the pyramid is Prosecco. Asolo Prosecco DOCG is another DOCG within the region, but we're not talking about that today. We are interested in the top three quadrants of the pyramid. So the lower quadrant is Conegliano, Valdobbiadene, Prosecco Superiore, DOCG, 15 communes. And then the little brown sandwich in the middle is the Conegliano, Valdobbiadene, Prosecco Superiore, Rive, DOCG, and we'll talk about the Rive. There are 43 Rive. There are specific, super impossibly steep areas with special protected names. And then at the very top, you have Superiore di Cartizze, DOCG, 108 hectares, a small fraction of an area in it, where they make the top of the Prosecco DOCG, Conegliano, Valdobbiadene, Superiore. Okay, look at those beautiful hills. So you could see, I mean, like these photographs that they sent us look enhanced, but it's just that beautiful golden hour when the vines are just beautiful, bright green. But the undulating hills, the steepness, all of this, what makes this whole area, and I don't know if we'll see more photos in a row, but what makes this area so unique and why it gained the UNESCO protection, which took forever to get, was they had to prove that unlike other wine regions where man bent the land to its desires for topography. That sounded terrible. Where man made man tamed the land for its uses. Here, they completely work within the ecosystem. Nobody has changed anything. If the hills are like this, they don't put terraces in. They plant like this. So the land is unspoiled, completely a patchwork of tiny little vineyards from all different small families. And it's been this way unchanged for hundreds of years. And unlike other areas where they would put terraces in, here everything is covered in green. And they let everything grow naturally. There's even, we'll talk later about the huge push for sustainability and banning pesticides. Certain pesticides that are used everywhere else are not allowed here. So there's a lot to talk about. So we talked about already that this is from, we're talking from east to west, from Valdobbiadene from Conegliano to Valdobbiadene. one grape in particular, Glera. And I think it's really funny to tell you a quick story about why we talk about Glera now. But 10 years ago, when I visited the area, they were just getting ramped up with anger about the term Prosecco and how it was being used all over the world to talk about sparkling wine. I told you we even say it here interchangeably with champagne, but the last straw that will go down in history as the last straw was an ad with Paris Hilton sipping a can of Brazilian Prosecco with a straw. And that seemed to be the last piece of the wall before it all came tumbling down. And they said, okay, that's it. We need to protect the word Prosecco, unique to this region. Before that, they never used the word Glera. They were just using Prosecco as interchangeable with the grape. But they said, okay, you can't call any sparkling wine Prosecco unless it's from this protected area. And we're going to say, if you want to make a Prosecco style, you could use the grape name Glera. And guys, I speak Italian well enough to know that in Italian, Glera is not a pretty word. I kind of equate it to suocera. Suocera is the Italian word for mother-in-law. That doesn't sound very nice either, does it? I mean, you can see that's kind of loaded there, suocera. Like, you kind of swear it. You don't say like, oh, my suocera. You say, la suocera. The mother-in-law is on the phone, right? Although I'm lucky I have a really great mother-in-law. My mother-in-law, Lucia, who's from Sicily, by the way. But Glera, not so pretty. And so it was really, I think, a double-edged sword of like, we don't even want you to use Glera. Just stop using Prosecco, stop using Glera. But if you're going to make Prosecco method outside of the area, you can call it sparkling Glera. Try that. And that really hasn't gone very well. And Paris Hilton stopped drinking it, by the way. So look at the steepness here. It's sort of crazy. And you saw in the beautiful film that we showed earlier on that they literally have to use pulley systems. Everything's picked by hand, and everything has to be brought up and brought down. They use pulley systems. It's crazy. It's very much to me what it reminded me of going to the Pfalz in Germany, where they had these crazy, but even there they had terraces to break. There's no breaks here from the 500 meters up to 50 down. There's no breaks and terraces there. It's just one straight through. Okay, the soils. So the way this is laid out from left to right, so we'd say from west to east is how you would see the different soil types. So Conegliano, which is on the eastern side, would be the far right pictures, characterized by clay and alluvial glacial origin that rich in calcium, carbonate, blah, 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 blah. On the far left, over by the number 1, that's sort of Valdobbiadene, stands out for its soils, very ancient origin, moraine soils, sandstone, clays, and everything in between. So, not a very big area at all. It's really quick to drive across. I did it like a few times a day, every day when I was there. But you have huge range of difference in soil. So, again, a lot's going on in this little magical place. And there's the magical place. So undulating hills, steep mountain hill faces, and everything in between. But very little has been done to alter this area. It probably looked the same 400 years ago. Handcrafted wines, long history. So it's true when you talk to all the winemakers, they love to point out that this wine takes, I mean, everyone, there's a lot of hype, it's a lot of pride among the stories I heard, but 600 hours worth of work is necessary each year as opposed to 150. It's sort of like when you hear about winemakers on the island of Pantelleria down in Sicily, that it takes 40% more grapes to make one small bottle of Passito. Like, it's the sort of the same kind of an equation where there's so much more work that goes into these bottles. And when I hear that, by the way, I question why these wines remain such amazing values. Even at the high end, I mean, even Cartizze aren't as outrageously priced as a lot of champagne. For the work that goes into these wines, I think they should be priced a lot higher than they are, but that's because I have free samples here, so I'm not paying for them. Okay, let's keep going. So there you go. Again, everything manually hauled up and down, 600 hours worth of work. I love these pulley systems, and look at the steepness there. It's just crazy.
I think that, Anthony, I'm going to pipe in 1 second. One of the coolest things that I think that the region stands out for is that when people started planting grapes there so long ago, they didn't manipulate the land. They went with what the land was, and so they really left those crazy hogback hills and the Ciglioni. And that's part of what led to the UNESCO status, I think, was that they respected the land as it was, and they didn't, get the bulldozers out and try to make it all neat and straight and all of that.
Yeah, I touched upon, I was going to talk about the Ciglioni in a second when we get, there's a slide for that. By the way, I forgot to say the most important thing, everybody. So those of you who signed up early and have one of the 6 that we sent you, there's, some of you got the first 3, some got the second. And if you just came with a bottle of sparkling, let's pour a quick glass. I need one right now. I'm very warm. I put a jacket on for you to look nice, but it was really not a smart move in my very hot apartment. So let's have a little toast here to Conegliano, Valdobbiadene, Superiore, DOCG. Everybody, cheers.
Cheers.
Okay, I'll tell you what I had in a second, but pretty interesting history here. 1876, the first wine school in all of Italy opens in Conegliano, followed by 1923, the Institute of Viticulture and Experimentation in Conegliano. In 1962, they finally protect Conegliano Valdobbiadene, the protected zone was created. The DOC in 1969 came along, followed by DOCG status in 2009. So I was there in 2008 when they were working on getting the DOCG. And then in those 10 years, the Prosecco Hills of Conegliano and Valdobbiadene proclaimed a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So, I mean, on a graph, it looks like nothing, but 10 long years. I joked to Kimberly and Liz yesterday and said, like, I remember the press releases that they would send out, and it was like ridiculous, aching press releases like, 2010, UNESCO accepts the application for heritage, protected heritage. 2011, UNESCO asks several more questions, and it's like 700 pages. 2013, Conegliano Valdobbiadene respond. It's like it's the height of European bureaucracy at its craziest, and the Italians do bureaucracy really, really well. I don't know if you've ever gone to a post office in Italy, but it could take 3 days to mail the same package. You have to keep coming back with different stamps. Okay, so there's the hogbacks Liz just mentioned. These beautiful, like it's actually a funny metaphor for it, but these undulating hills, like the back of the hog, really, really just spectacular. And I'd like to have that little vacation house there in the middle. From the vineyard to the glass. Okay, so varieties. We told you Glera, 85% minimum in the bottle. Other varieties are allowed to be used. I think it surprises people that Pinot and Chardonnay can be used, but the local varieties that can be thrown in are Verdizo, Bianchetta, Pereira, and Glera Lunga. But I mean, ostensibly, most people just talk about this is, Glera, and that's really it. And that kind of information doesn't really come up unless you go deep into the tech sheets. But there's Glera. Okay, so the styles, we have the all new extra brut at the top, which is the 0 to 6 grams. Brut, which is probably the most common, at least here in the US, we love brut versus the extra dry, which I see a lot more extra dry when I'm in Italy. They love a little more sweetness on Prosecco. It's expected. And that's actually for, typically for the aperitivo hour when you go to parties and bars. Extra dry is put out, and people are sort of shocked that it's a little sweeter, but they're serving super savory snacks alongside that. So, super salty cheeses and savory, like think about like having anchovies and Parmigiano Reggiano, like all those savory snacks with a slightly off dry wine. It's a wonderful idea. So the breakup by typography doesn't include extra brut because it's so new, but 28% of what they make is brut. Extra dry is 65%, which I think surprises people, but in the rest of the world, they love the slightly sweeter version more. Americans stick to brut thinking it's more sophisticated to drink drier, which, we all know that that's very contentious with so much Moscato being made in this country right now. And dry 6.2%, so that makes sense to me. That's a little too sweet.
What I'd love to interject at this point, though, is that the acidity level of the Glera is such that, you really don't taste that sweetness as much. It's sort of well woven in, and so it makes for really great pairings all the way through the meal.
Yeah. When we taste them, you'll see, like, even as we go up a little bit into extra dry, it doesn't taste it at all. I mean, it's shocking because there's so much acidity in there.
Well, look at the sales figures too, you know, or production, I should say, a lot more extra dry made than brut or dry.
But Kimberly, am I correct by saying that I think Americans tend to stick to the brut because they're aligned with what they think they should buy in sparkling wine as well?
I think that's true. Although I think people are experimenting. You know, I wish it were a little bit more. This is the big education area, I think, for those present on this call. You know, is to help try to translate this and let people know, especially in this subcategory, there's a lot of nuance. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love serving extra brut at parties and shocking people because they look at if they know anything even about the classifications, even the backwards way that everything's classified. To see that it's extra dry, they're shocked because they think, wow, I wouldn't think we could have extra dry before a meal, or isn't it supposed to be sweeter? And I'm like, A, you could have it whenever you want. B, no, it's not supposed to be sweeter. This is the beautiful acidity. And this is how in Italy, I always had it in, you know, usually with those aperitivos with great sharp cheeses and fish and things like that, you know, like the great happy hours they have over there are just amazing. But that's how I present them. And I think that once people try it, it resonates. It's not just about brut.
Yeah.
People stick to brut for safety.
I've run into more than one person who says, "Oh, I don't think I like Prosecco or Prosecco Superiore because it's so sweet." But what they don't know is that there are all those different sweetness levels, and maybe they were having a dry and they just had no idea. And then, you know, I'll introduce them to a brut or even an extra dry that's low on the RS side, and they're, you know, it's a game changer. So it's a big area of education.
Yeah. And Cartizze is always a great pleasure to talk to people about that. You know, there's this very, very small, precious area, and I visited it twice. And the wines that are just, I mean, the topography of the place is crazy. You literally, I remember going to like Colvetteras and like walking out onto the terrace, and it's literally like looking down as if you're, you know, like it's not even as graceful as like a ski run. It was literally like a cliff straight down the mountain. There's just these crazy, crazy slopes. But the more difficult it is, the better the wine it yields. And these are magical, magical wines from this area.
Most expensive land, vineyard land in Italy too.
Is that true?
Yes.
Right.
I mean, it's up there with Piedmont, but they're neck and neck.
So nonetheless steep are the Rive. So there's, I think there are 43 Rive classifications. We're going to taste 2 tonight. Rive indicates in local dialect the vineyards that are situated on the steepest sites. And so usually you'll always see the word Rive and then the area that it delineates. So they're protected areas that are talked about this way. So the Rive is considered a specific area that's very steep and unique and defined geographically. So it has usually that, and then maybe the town that it's attached to, or the area that the commune, the hamlet it's attached to. Okay, sustainability. So this was a big conversation I had with Julia from the Consortio last week. How much is happening very quickly there. I mean, this guy's manicure aside, it's a beautiful picture. 2011, the consortium provided itself with, they actually imposed on themselves a viticultural protocol that would, over the next decade, keep making it harder and harder and harder to cut corners and make wine cleaner and respectful of the land and respectful of the idea that we could do this. People were doing this here hundreds of years ago without any help. We could do the same and bring it back. And so no agrochemicals, really, and we'll talk about the acronym for the B you might start to see on certain labels where they've asked voluntarily for people to go completely sustainable and to put it on their labels. We'll get to that slide in a second, right? I think, Kimberly?
Yep.
Yeah.
Fair amount of older vines in the region. This one's probably 100 years for sure.
Right, so glyphosate. Glyphosate was banned in 2019. It's used everywhere. Liz, what's the name of it's usually in the fertilizer called
Roundup.
Yeah,
Roundup, right.
The main ingredient in Roundup.
The main ingredient in Roundup. So when they said that we're not using it anymore in the area, it was sort of an earthquake because this could set other people on their heels to say, okay, if they could do it and make great wine without having to use it, maybe we can too. So I think that they're really setting a trend here to say, we don't need to use these chemicals. They're terrible, and they're hiding in plain sight in so many vineyard regions around the world. They are the leaders here in Italy, at least, to say we're not using it anymore. So since 2019. So the first ones you'll be seeing them now aren't out yet, but it's a great first step. Here it is, the SQNPI certification, Systemic Qualità Nazionale Production Integrata certification, launched again last year. So last year was a busy year for cleaning up their acts there, to say let's really work on sustainability and make that our signature the next decade. So they got the UNESCO classification. Now they're going to protect this magical land that is, or protected, or actually respect it further now that it's protected. So there are 575 hectares that have been encompassed in this area out of the 85,000 hectares that make up the whole denomination. So it's a small area right now and one of the wineries we're going to taste tonight is one of the first ones I've seen to claim it on their website to say we have joined in. So you'll see the B, and it might be on the back labels sometime soon, but just know that's the imprimatur for super sustainable. Okay, so here's the UNESCO things that Liz brought up earlier. The hogback geomorphological conformation. It's a great word. So you'll see these steep, rugged slopes extending from east to west, interspersed with parallel running valleys. The Ciglione, again, another silent G, people. It's not Giglio, it's Giglio. It's not Ciglione, it's Ciglione. It's the diphthong GL forms the LL like million. Ciglione, a particular type of terrace that's covered not with stones, but with grassy soil. And then the patchwork landscape, like I said to you before, hundreds and hundreds of small vineyards that are either joined together through ownership or just cooperatives, but thousands of small scale wine producers create this beautiful geographical landscape that it's breathtaking. You really need to go there if you haven't been there. Look at that. They're just crazy. So beautiful. Okay, so 90 million bottles sold overall every year. 28, that's from 2018 estimates. So 83 million bottles of Conegliano, Valdobbiadene, Prosecco Superiore, 2 million bottles of Rive, 1.5 of Cartizze, 2.6 of Frizzante, and only 123,000 of Tranquillo, which is still wine, which we're not even talking about today. And Frizzante means semi-sparkling. So 90%, 97%, almost all of it is sparkling wine production there. This is interesting. And by the way, I had to look up Benelux, which is Italian for Luxembourg. Germany leads in, by the way, Germany, it's actually interesting because when they were losing their minds in Prosecco about the use of the word Prosecco everywhere, there were German producers using the word Prosecco to make German sparkling wines, and that is verboten, to use the mother tongue. So they've locked down on that, and Germany still continues to buy the most Prosecco Conegliano Valdobbiadene Superiore. The UK is second, Switzerland third, US fourth, and then Luxembourg in the top 5, beating out Austria and Canada. It's a lot of wine, a lot of wine, 174 million euros in value. How to buy. So, I mean, we're talking to the trade here, but this is always good to remind people that you want to look for the purple DOCG bow tie on every label. There's the Consorzio logo, the name of the denomination, Conegliano Valdobbiadene Superiore di Cartizze. So this is like the super high end. A serial number, the Q, what do you call it? The Q, what am I thinking of? You call that thing?
QR code.
QR code.
Yeah.
And in this case, a gold label signifying the very best.
Mm-hmm. And 15 dots, which represent the communes here.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's a little insider tip there. So the red dots. Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I was talking to the guys. I'm gonna come out here and tell you that I am colorblind. So although I could see red wine from white wine pretty easily. So those red dots didn't jump out to me on the purple because it doesn't. It's a I barely passed my driving test, but that was so long ago, nobody cares anymore. All right, so read the label, people. This is really good stuff here because, you know, labels are impossible, and they're in Italian, and there's a lot of hidden G's everywhere. But this is your crib sheet here, starting from left to right. The producer on the left, name of the denomination, Conegliano, Valdobbiadene, or Conegliano, or Valdobbiadene. Distinction for residual sugar, extra brut, brut, extra dry, dry. Indication of nominal volume. For the sparkling ones on the right, the end of the name Prosecco always comes added the adjective superiore. DOCG denomination, the origine controllata e garantita. So, you know, we love, at least in the Italian wine writing trade, we loved when the G came out, because the DOC was already supposed to be protecting everything and making sure that everything was guaranteed, but the Italians needed one more guarantee. We had to make another bureaucratic designation just to add more paperwork, because they love paperwork. So now we have the DOCG, which came out in the 90s. And then at the end, the millesimato is the word for vintage year. So this is actually on the Rive. You have to have a vintage year. You don't always have to on the regular bottles. And the company name by who produced it. Any questions? We can come back to that, I guess. But storage and service, this is obvious. 6 to 8 degrees Celsius, so 42 to 46 degrees Fahrenheit. So a little warmer than some of us might think. I mean, most Americans want it straight out of the ice bucket and straight out of the kitchen fridge. A little colder, but when they come up, they really do open up beautifully. I mean, they're delicious ice cold as well, but I think it's really nice to revisit it about 10, 15 minutes after you pour it and see how beautifully they open up. And also, the acid is much more expressive as it warms up, which I think is important. Okay, so those of you who have the first bottle, we have L'Antica Quercia Mathieu, Conegliano Valdobbiadene. So L'Antica Quercia, the ancient oak tree. Mathieu, I couldn't figure out what they meant by that, but I mean, it sounds like the name Matthew in French, but Matteo in Italian, but Mathieu might be just a conjoinment of the two. Anyway, DOCG, and it's Rive di Scomigo, so it's a specific Rive, and so it gets a vintage year 2019. I'm going to pour myself, this is the first one I started with before.
And I think, Anthony, you might want to note this one is organic as well.
Yes, yeah, that's in my notes. Thanks, Liz. So this is organic. There's 2 organics we're going to try, but this is just north of the town of Conegliano in the hamlet of Scomigo. Their motto is, in Italian, I sogni più belli nascono all'ombra di un grande albero. The greatest dreams are made under the shade of a giant tree. In this case, there's beautiful oak trees there, the Quercia. Quercia comes up in a lot of wine labels in Tuscany too, so there's a lot of oak trees too. Rive indicates a Prosecco Superiore made entirely of hand-harvested grapes from one of 43 registered Rive, always followed by the designation, so Rive di Scomigo. These wines are also millesimato. I told you before, they have to be vintage dated. RS is only 6, and it's barely perceptible in the nose. And it's a really, how many people have this wine? I'm curious. I guess I really can't see everybody, but.
Should we, if you want to bounce out of the deck and go to the people screen, we can do that for tasting if you want to.
That's okay, it's okay. Okay, any questions on this first wine? So we're gonna try this. The 2 in a row that we're gonna do first are—
I have a question.
Yes.
The text sheet for this wine says that the first fermentation and aging on the yeast over the winter, and bottle fermentation in the spring of the year following the harvest. So is this a colfondo?
No, well, you know, technically I think a colfondo would really be aged in the bottle and exported and packaged in the bottle. So the newer term that's being used is soglieviti, which kind of covers a whole range of yeast contact with the wine. So,
Right.
yeah.
And on the lees, but right, yeah, Mary, that's a great
It
question.
says
But
bottle fermentation, so I'm just a bit sort of wondering.
You know, we can dig a little deeper on that specificity, Mary, and circle right back to you.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful wine, but I was just interested to read that. I'm not sure
Yeah.
if it's maybe an incorrect translation or.
Yeah, generally when I see Cofondo from the region, it has a lot of the traditional packaging. It has a lot of like a pet nat. It has a lot of the yeast, you know, within the bottle itself. It's something that you would often have in situ.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the Sulievity has actually addressed the Cofondo tradition and bridged it over to longer lees contact.
Yeah.
For, you know, for bottles like this.
any other questions?
Pat Thompson had said, are many producers making a still Prosecco like L'Antica Quercia? Their website said it preserves the tradition of the Alta Marca Hills.
Still Prosecco.
I think the answer to that is that not many producers are making still wines at all, that Tranquillo style. It is really, really quite rare. And very, very little of it is exported, I think.
That's correct.
I was gonna say, I mean, I've been there twice. I've never even been offered a Tranquillo ever. It's just.
Gregoletto is one that's brought in by Kermit Lynch, and they have some of their still wines here. They're kind of rare to find, and they're delicious, but it's a real exception.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else? Or we should move on to number 2. We have the Belenda San Fermo. So the first 4 are all brut. San Fermo refers to a little church across from the vineyards. This wineries in the vineyards are in Carpesica, a little hamlet near Vittorio Emanuele, Vittorio Veneto, which is on the far northeast quadrant of the Conegliano Valdobbiadene Superiore zone. This would be just north of Conegliano. 6.5 grams per liter, so just 0.5 more than the first one, but nose is just particularly beautiful. This is what I love to talk when I talk about Prosecco in general, the freshness that you get in these wines. No, there's no comparison to talk about what you smell on these wines versus Champagne. There's nothing there to talk about that make them at all even remotely related. The freshness, immediacy, the deliciousness here is just wonderful.
Anthony, do you want to talk a little bit about the aromatic profile? Meredith had noted that it's really interesting.
On this one in particular?
Mm-hmm. Or Meredith, feel free to speak up yourself too. We'd love to hear from you.
Meredith, where are you?
Hi guys. Sorry, I'm using I'm using my colleague's Zoom actually. My name is Elise, but when I smelled the Belenda, it almost has like a brown sugar, like almost kind of like within that baking spice kind of profile. So I don't know if everyone is smelling that or if it's just me, but like it's so different from any other Prosecco that I've come across, which are usually so like have a lot of that like apple bright fruit kind of thing, especially the ones that we're getting that are not maybe the DOCG, but just the Prosecco Superiore. So I was curious if anyone else had smelled anything like in those kind of like secondary notes that we kind of talk about through the WSET.
Anybody have a comment there? Kimberly?
I'm doing a little bit of the admin behind the scenes, so repeat the question.
And Meredith, will you tell us your name? I know you said you were using a friend's.
Hi, yes, sorry. I can actually change the name in my picture.
Okay.
Let me see. But yeah, my name's Elise Cordell.
Oh, Elise, hi.
Hi, Anthony.
Um,
There we go.
You had noticed some like sort of like, what did you say, like brown sugary notes?
Yeah, one of the first notes I got was kind of brown sugar, and now I'm getting a lot of pear. So like really nice ripe pear.
Mhm. Yeah,
Pear
definitely.
doesn't-
I was going to say a lot of the primary, like green apple and pear, white, a little bit of floral are often markers for these aromas, and of course secondary and tertiary with time. But
Right,
brown
it's a
sugar is the first one I've heard. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, to me, definitely the pear jumped out more than apple. Like the apple to me is like classic, but any of the star fruit, like the star, like pear, apple, to me seems to be normal. But I'm not getting the brown sugar.
I unfortunately don't have all the samples with me because we sent them all to you, so I can't be parallel tasting.
I know, I don't either.
All I have is my Villa Sandy, which is delicious, Beck, but I'm not partaking of all the wine, so I wish I could be with you to do that. Oh well.
Well, in the interest of time, because I see we're getting close, I want to move on to number 3. Unless anyone has any other questions, of course. We have La Tordera Brunei. Interesting name, Brunei.
This is actually run by a woman, the CEO of the company, which is pretty wonderful.
Yeah, we were talking about that. Well, I mean, we were trying to find a compelling number that we didn't have enough time to look into it, Kimberly, but like that over 40% of the entire workforce is female, but we didn't know how many people were in leadership. We want to come back with that figure and see how many women are actually running these shows, like the Sorelle Branche, for example.
Yeah, and I think the other interesting point too is, unlike a lot of regions around the world where the next generations are often moving on to other careers, because of the school and because of tradition, a lot of people here stay multi-generationally, which is pretty cool for institutional memory and tradition.
Yeah. La Tordera is high on the Cartizze Hill, but this one is not a Cartizze. They've been making wine here since the 1920s. To me, this is a really classic, crisp, clean, white fruit, apple. Not getting any brown sugar. I don't know about anybody else. And again, this is where like this is even 7.5 sugar, so a full gram more.
Tons of
all.
pear,
Nothing,
Anthony.
nothing there.
It's all
Say it
pear. It's all a lot of pear.
Yeah, a lot of pear for you, Steve.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, you like it?
Love it. I love it.
I think it's gorgeous. Any comments? Any questions?
Oh, I mute myself.
Your silence is making me nervous, people. I'm used to a live audience and a lot of laughter.
Or else you're going to start calling on people randomly.
Okay. But again, to go back to what we were saying earlier, despite the talk of sugar, wait, did someone ask me a question? I'm sorry.
I have 2 questions. One is, how available is this in the States, and how much does this cost? I don't have the tech sheets in front of me. Sorry.
I can tell you it's $20. I can't tell you who. Is it the importer on the?
Yeah, the importer's on the slide, and you guys all have the this deck within. When Kristen sent your reminder emails out, there's a link to a Dropbox in that email, and you can get this deck as well as all the tech sheets and some other materials as well.
Kristen, do you have the price handy? You should.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
he
Let
said
me pull them up.
it's
Yeah, $20.
Sorcerer, they don't like to give exact prices, so that is one different thing. Is it's usually they're like, it's precisely this, but let me pull it up really fast.
But I have a list. I have a list here. It's
Yeah.
number one.
Yeah,
Number one was 25, 2, 22. This one, $20. So we're up to let's move on to number 4, the Perlage.
I have a question.
Sure.
What percentage of Proseccos from the DOC zone are 100% Glera? This one we're talking about now includes Bianchetta and Verduzo. So Is it a trend as elsewhere that they are shooting for 100% varietal?
It's a good question. I would say that a lot of people are working with vineyards that were much like in, let's say, Oporto, the area there, you know, heritage vineyards with mixed grapes within them. And so incorporating those into the blend and identifying them.
Okay.
So that would be, I think, a really good, you know, there's not a desire to discard tradition, you know, so I would, it's a great question, not one I'd thought of. I don't know if it's been quantified, but we can definitely find that out.
Yeah, we'll ask.
Thanks.
Someone also asked, Mary John did, about Rosé Prosecco, which we haven't answered yet, but that is definitely something the DOC has embraced and adopted. And this region will not do it because it's not tradition for the area to, you know, cultivate Pinot Noir. There's a little bit of it there, but that's what's being used to make the Rosé Prosecco, and they have wholeheartedly disagreed with going in that direction. They don't want to follow trends. They want to follow, you know, their history. It's a point of view, it's a philosophy, but they feel very, very strongly about it, you know, and you have to wear, we all in the wine business wear different hats. You know, we wear our commercial hat and we wear our, you know, our educator hat, but, you know, I really respect their adherence to their laws and their real determination to be sure that DOCG is maintained and not sort of diluted.
Yeah, I mean, I've been following their reactions to the rosé, and I've been teaching a lot of rosé classes this summer, and I keep saying, like, rosé is going to jump the shark. I mean, there's everybody in their mother is making rosé now, and we don't need it. We do not need it here. And I'm glad they're sticking to their guns about it because there's plenty of rosé elsewhere. So number 4, Perlage, which is a great name, by the way. Icona. Smack dab in the middle of the region between Valdobbiadene and Conegliano. The first certified organic winery since 1985, the biggest 100% certified organic winery in Prosecco Superiore DOCG, 100% vegan apparently since 2016. That was interesting, but now everybody's vegan too. If you have this wine, let's taste it.
This is my favorite out of the whole bunch, Mr. Giglio. This is, like, for me, the Krug of Prosecco for this tasting.
Oh, John, you opened it?
Yeah.
The private joke. Tell me. The Krug, I mean, that's some pretty big words.
There's something so beautifully balanced about this, and it's in the brewed category, so it's not extra dry. But I'm just it's sort of it's expansive on the palate, a lot of great flavors. It's really nicely balanced between that touch of residual. I don't have the text sheet in front of me, so I don't know how much is in this one, but
10 grams.
It's just 10. It's just like great balance and tons of really pretty stuff. And one of my biggest questions was just sort of where to get these wines. I'm trying to dig through Wine Searcher and find them, but I wonder if, like, they're coming in or if they're just, like, not here yet, or if you guys can talk a little bit about that too.
I can speak to that. We definitely want most of the, hi JC, great to see you.
You too.
We definitely want, you know, a number of the producers that we're representing to be distributed here. I think the challenge is that most of them have to go with different importers and or distributors around the country. So, you know, the productions range here within the consortio, but the distribution, I will not lie, is not always the easiest thing. And it's improving with time, but it's not where we'd love it to be. So, you know, it's one of those sort of heartbreak things that you've got to keep looking for it if you really want it. I know that wine.com is carrying about 15 DOCG SKUs now. We did a Weibo tasting with them not long ago, and I think you'll start seeing these start to populate more. The interesting thing, and believe me, as a bubble lover across the boards, I don't like to ever have any success at someone else's expense, but champagne sales are definitely starting to dip a little. And I think, you know, as we know that this crisis is going to stretch out runway wise, we're looking at alternatives for high quality and great price. So the numbers here are growing, which is good, albeit small, but it's growing. So yeah, ask for it, I guess is a good thing to say.
I mean, again, on the slides, that every slide lists the distributor for each. So
yeah. Mm-hmm.
wow,
Okay.
this seems to be super popular. Everybody liked that. A lot of good comments about that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Number 5 is the La Farra.
I think these are just off.
There we go.
This one is, well, yeah, it's either the Sandy. They're both the same RS, so we're good.
Okay, so La Farra takes its name from the hamlet of Farra di Soligo, another hamlet located right in the center between Conegliano and Valdobbiadene. This is the one I mentioned earlier that is pursuing the NQS IP, or the SQ NPI in Italian, with the B for sustainability. They applied last year and are waiting for a certification. But I think that of all the ones we tasted, this is the one that actually has it on their website saying that they've applied for the certification. Okay.
Also the last name of the president of the consortio. This is his family's wine. So that's the other thing that's interesting, is that the presidency rotates every 3 years, and it's always usually someone who's a producer. So there's a lot of balance and fairness with respect to leadership.
Yeah. So we're in a Rive, has to have a vintage, of course. RS is a little higher here. It's definitely a little more obvious. But again, the hallmark of these wines is that despite the RS, this great acidity, a beautiful wine and a ridiculous value at $17 for a Rive. Crazy, 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 crazy. That's the underlying story of all of these wines, is that the prices are crazy for what they put into making these wines. Just, I think that's really worth talking about, especially looking at my friends in the white who are here are writers, like Jonathan and Annie. Any questions?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the comments. Doug Paulding, I think you're on Allison Smith's Zoom account, said distinct flippy minerality.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah. Kimberly, I think you have to go back one. We missed the Villa Sanvi.
Yeah, I'm not trying to not to. I'm just taking a look at the questions. There we go.
Really like that.
Voila.
And we have Rebecca here. We have to pay respect to Folio. Villa Sandi's here. By the way, I visited there a lifetime ago, but a spectacular estate in a Palladian villa dating back to 1622. It's pretty crazy. They produce an award-winning Cartizze called La Rivetta. This is their extra dry. They make wine all over the entire zone. Another really great example. And $20, again, a spectacular value for a really beautiful wine, and extra dry, and it's barely sweet at all. Really barely sweet at all. In fact, it seems drier than number 5. And both are 17. So there you have it, folks. We've tasted 6 beautiful wines, 2 different styles, basically, from all over the zone. Any questions, any comments, any reactions?
I would love everybody, before we lose any people, I would love to have everybody hold up whatever your favorite bottle was and smile for the camera. And I'm going to do a couple of them. So I've got some vertical and some not vertical. 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Let me get one more, and then I'm going to have to move to the other screen, and nobody knows who's on which screen, right? So we have to. All right, let's see. We've got page 2. Okay. Here, hello, page 2. 1. Has everybody got their bottle up?
I guess you got to pose just in case you're on page 2.
Yeah, exactly. I know, that's the thing. Okay,
Yeah.
one more and then we will be good to go. Awesome. Cheers, everybody. Thank you for that.
There was a question, let's see, that someone had. I wanted to see if we could answer it. I'm trying to find it now. Somebody had asked about extra dry being mainly on the back label. I can't say that's been my experience. Maybe it's a 50-50 situation. I've seen a lot of it on the front label. I think sometimes, look at the design of some of these, very minimalist. We're talking Northern Italy, not a lot of clutter and confusion on the front, often just a cool linear look, and then all the data you need on the back. I don't think it's by design per se. I think it's really more like let the front of the label be the marquee.
I hadn't noticed that myself either.
Yeah.
All right.
Jonathan Cristaldi has a comment. Speak briefly to the size of the production facilities and what you've seen. Your last trip there, you were blown away by the size of some of the wineries, but the quality is still there. Interesting comment.
Anthony, you want to talk about your experience?
My experience there?
Visiting different producers?
Liz, you were really low. I could barely hear you.
Oh, sorry. Jonathan had asked about the size of some of the winery facilities there. That he said when he went, he was shocked by how large some of the production facilities were without compromising the quality.
I did see all different sizes. I mean, and they're I mean, not in this zone in particular, because I visited throughout Prosecco. They're definitely, the cooperatives fulfill every stereotype of a monstrous facility, but I think you're right. I mean, even those who might use bigger facilities are making just beautiful wines. It doesn't fit the idea of they should be using these tiny boutique-y, 2 or 3 autoclaves per facility. It's not the way it's done, and yet they're harnessing quality really, really well there. I need to get back there. It's been too long.
And there's also a lot of oversight. I mean, I have to say, interestingly enough, with the upcoming harvest, they are they're going to reduce yields. They don't want to if it's a bountiful year, they want to kind of control the quantity that's produced. And so they do a lot of self-selection, sort of, triage in the vineyard. So I think there's a lot of government involvement for my taste, but, I understand it. So I think that's why you have a lot of quality, because there's just strict control. Yeah.
And I think, again, we could bandy about this enormous mouthful of a name, Valdobbiadene, Conegliano, Valdobbiadene, Superiore DOCG, but it makes a big difference in an area that's very, very, very big to really say, okay, if we want to focus on quality, it's big name, but a very small place. And that's what we should be looking for on the labels. If you're looking for quality, and they really are locking down on standards and sustainability here to make it better and better and better within, the confines of this giant sea of Prosecco all around them.
Someone had asked about the big festival that is there, and it's usually in May. It's called Vino in Villa. And
yes.
It's a chance to go around and taste, at this beautiful castle on the hill near Borgaluce, and try all the different producers, and then do different events around at the wineries.
Yeah.
This past May, everything was canceled. The Giro d'Italia was canceled. The Vino in Villa was canceled. So more next year to see what's going to happen. But that is one of the big things. And there's the Prosecco Road, which I think Anthony mentioned. But you can take your bicycle, you can take your car. It's the first wine road in Europe, from what I understood. So
yes.
It's actually nice. You don't have to do the thinking. You just get in the car, on the Vespa, or on the bicycle if you're so inclined.
Yeah, of all the Strada del Vino in Italy, it was the very first one, and it's the most prosaic. It's spectacular. You could hike a great part of it too, and work off all the wine you're drinking, and get a good hike in too. It's pretty amazing, really amazing.
Joel Mack has a question about, does he need permission to use photos from the download folder for published articles?
You're totally welcome to use them. Just credit the consortio if you don't mind, but you're more than welcome. We always like to use public use shots. to keep it simple. Thank you for asking.
I would like to add, if anyone uses my photo from this presentation, please use the tall, thin filter. Thank you. All right, anybody else?
Just a note to say that if you have any questions that we didn't answer, please, I'm putting the email in the chat box so you can send it to press@charlescom.com. We're happy to help you with anything. We have a lot more infographics and full-on press kits if you want to dive deep, if you're studying certification, if you want more wonk, we've got your wonk. So let us know. Anthony, you were great. Thank you so much for.
Thank you, Kimberly and Liz and Anthony.
Yeah.
Good job, Anthony.
Thank you, Steve.
Joining us, everybody.
So great to see all of you. It's so great to see somebody. I miss you guys. I miss you guys in all the tastings.
Annie Pops, and I love your sign. That's weird. I have to take a funny picture of that. Will you hold it up again?
I don't know if I saw it. Let me see. What is? Oh wait. Aw, sweet.
So cute.
Hi, Annie.
All right, guys. Let's all wear our masks so we can get together sooner than later, please, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Anthony.
Buonanotte tutti. Grazie. Ciao.